Good morning, human geography students. Welcome to day 2 of Unit 3. So, continuing our discussions about culture. Yesterday, we talked about the difference of folk and popular culture. You guys really dove into those key terms when working on your culture collage. So, I want to talk about folk clothing a little bit. Folk clothing is usually chosen as a result of the environmental conditions or needs of an area, right? So, if a group of people is living in a very cold climate, chances are snowshoes, fur jackets, their housing style, that's all going to mimic the result of those environmental conditions or needs. So, folk art many times mirrors the views of a local environment. Okay, so folk art many times mirrors the views of that local environment. Popular culture, the environment may be something to modify for a leisure activity. So, example, the development and creation of golf courses, right? So, um, chances are in a folk culture area, they're not going to be pretty high on the fact of building a golf course. But in popular culture, right, if it's going to provide revenue and a leisure activity for people, it'll get built, right? So an example there is golf courses. Okay, sorry, my computer's a little slow this morning for some reason. Challenges to popular culture. As we can look at these two visuals right here, right? Like talk about uniformity. 2013 Toyota, 2013 Ford basically look the same, right? So one challenge to popular culture is the idea of uniformity, especially in the case of fast food, gas stations, and lodging. Landscapes look relatively the same around the world rather than preserving your own identity. Okay, so we'll look at that as a challenge. It's crazy, right? Like a gas station here compared to a gas station in Maine, a hotel here compared to a hotel in California, fast food here compared to fast food in Iceland or France, basically the same. Which I don't know if that's like a comforting, consistent thing for when you're traveling. Yes, maybe that was one thing like when I was in Europe that I enjoyed, but it's also like mind blowing to think about all the different languages and cultures around the world and places that basically have the same fast food, gas stations, and lodging. We'll talk more about the fast food here in a bit. Another challenge to popular culture is the constant change, right? Like popular culture varies from time to time, where folk culture doesn't. Popular culture varies from time to time. What was popular in the 90s is not so popular now in 2020, even though I continue to listen to 90s pop, Pandora, right? It's constantly changing. We look at outfits from the 50s compared to outfits from the 90s, compared to outfits from the 70s, thinking about music. Popular culture is constantly changing, which can be a challenge. So this idea of fast food, um, we're gonna do a little activity today looking at McDonald's abroad. All right, so I just keep that in mind. So, diffusion of popular media, right? TV, internet, Facebook. The viewing of media is the most popular leisure activity in much of the world. Think about that. Viewing of media, whether that's the TV, internet, social media, is the most popular leisure activity in much of the world. Media is the most important mechanism by which popular culture is transmitted. I don't think we've ever seen a year that has defined that more than 2020. Okay, the diffusion of TV from the U.S. to the rest of the world took about 50 years. So when old school TVs came to the United States and started becoming popular, like one per household, for in the in the 1930s, and then started to build, it honestly took about 50 years for TVs to get around the world. Okay, 50 years of diffusion and spreading of those ideas, where Facebook and social media has really only taken a few years, which is absolutely mind boggling that it was able to spread that quickly. All right, last one. Challenges to folk culture. Loss of traditional values, right? Like, folk culture loses some traditional values, but some that it's probably okay that they get lost, but maybe other people in that culture don't think so, right? Like, women being below men in a lot of folk culture. That has just kind of taken a back seat in 2020 and beyond, right? That just doesn't really fly anymore. Where some people feel like that's a loss of the traditional values of their particular folk culture. The other thing would be the imposition of pop culture through diffusion of media. So maybe your folk culture all of a sudden is being exposed to more contemporary ways because of TV, the internet, and newspapers. It provides followers of folk culture with more contemporary ways and options. So that's been a challenge for folk culture as well, is that diffusion of media. And that's what I have for you today.